So it's very telling that me as a Calvinist is not using precept, right? And I wonder, like, what it means to justify the laws of logic, because they seem to be self-evident, and I think the atheists can use them from a practical point of view. So that would be my first point. And
How could you observe there that they're self-evident?
Well, he didn't say observe, but I don't know what you're talking about.
yeah,
If something is self-evident, it would be evident to your senses. Okay, that would be
No, but
David. That would be like saying that the uniformity of nature is self-evident.
well,
No, that's not what that
that's why
means.
that's why
Okay.
I don't understand what it would mean.
That's not
As
what self-evident means. I'm sorry,
justification,
David.
to ask justification for the laws of logic.
Well, David, are you suggesting that the laws of logic, being universally invariant, are self-evident, David?
No,
Why didn't you answer his
so
question?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you were being
Well,
interrupted. Go ahead, David.
David, did you hear an answer to your
I'm
question?
sorry, David. You're being interrupted. Go ahead, answer
David,
it.
did you hear an answer to your
You're being
question?
interrupted for a third time. Go ahead,
Am
David.
I interrupting you? Because
You're
I'm not
interrupting
talking.
for
Hold up. No interruptions, please.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah, did you hear an answer to the question,
For the
David?
fifth time, David is being
Yeah,
interrupted.
I think David
David
has
hasn't
the
done anything for
That's
2
right.
minutes.
5
Nobody's
times,
David.
JL has interrupted David. Go
I'm
ahead.
just
No,
wondering
David
if.
wasn't
6
speaking at all.
times,
Nobody was
David has been
interrupting this.
interrupted.
Yeah,
Hey.
I'm
Go ahead,
waiting.
David.
I'm
Hey,
waiting. Okay.
7 times, David has been interrupted.
I just want to know if David
8
thinks.
times, David has been interrupted.
What are you doing?
9 times,
Can
David
you
has been
hold your
interrupted.
tongue, man? David has the floor. Just stop talking.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if
10
David has.
times,
Stop
David
hold
has
talking.
been
up.
Just let
interrupted.
the
Well,
Hold up.
ask your
Hold
question
up.
to David.
You're yelling
Everybody
over me.
shut up.
Okay, so David, the question that I asked you, you said that the laws of logic are self-evident. Okay, now that is akin to saying that the uniformity of nature. Yeah, could you do me a favor? If you're going to giggle on the microphone, could you mute your mic, please?
Well, I want to
Yeah,
hear.
would you mute your microphone, please? Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're behaving like a child, man.
Yeah, you are. You're giggling on the microphone. You're
This is a good-
disrupting the
this is a good
conversation.
flow we have
Everything
here.
is fine. Now, David, for example, when people hold to the idea of the uniformity of nature, and the uniformity of nature is a very similar and related concept. If somebody says that the uniformity of nature is self-evident, now, just real quick, David, is that problematic to say that the uniformity of nature is self-evident, David?
I don't think so.
Okay, here's the reason why. How would it be self-evident that the uniformity of nature exists?
Well, that's a false analogy.
Okay, for the 12th time you have interrupted David.
David, can I speak? Do you mind?
Okay,
Sure, go ahead.
13 times you have interrupted David.
He
I
just
asked
said
No,
go
David
ahead.
said he can
direct
speak.
question. 13 times you have interrupted.
Dogdrings, David said he can speak.
Okay,
I
go
must say,
ahead.
this
So,
is a
David.
weird-ass conversation, man.
Okay, Dave. So, how would the uniformity of nature be self-evident?
Do you mind if I speak, David?
14 times he's interrupted David.
Talkings, David said that JL can speak. Fuck's sake.
Yeah,
what's the
if
problem?
David
he's
said
given-
it was
if he's given the
okay.
floor, you let him have it.
Right.
David
So
said it was okay, so please let JL take the floor.
right. So I mean, for one, right? I don't know why you're changing the subject to the uniformity of nature, right? Now, the reason that's disanalogous, right, is because, for one, in the case of the laws of logic, right, the reason why they're self-evident is because what it means to talk about. I mean, this has been asked to you before too, right? Like, what exactly would it mean, right, for something like A to not be A, right? What would it mean for God to exist and not to exist, right? Or what would it mean for a star to not be a star, right? The reason why people say, I mean, first of all, you don't understand what self-evidence is, right? It's not an empirical thing. I don't know why you said that, but it's not. But the reason why people say the laws of logic are self-evident, right, is because what exactly would it mean for them not? I mean, what exactly would it mean for them not to be true, right? You never answered that question, right? And the reason why the thing with the uniformity of nature is disanalogous is because there doesn't seem to be some obvious incoherence with the idea of nature not being uniform.
Wait, your explanation. Wait, one second. Your explanation for why there's uniformity to nature is to ask a question.
Well, I said no.
Okay, now
I'm saying.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well,
Art is going to be next.
okay.
Okay.
Well, I'm
Well,
just.
well, I
saying
asked
spoken
David a
that
question. David,
okay.
how
Okay.
are the laws of logic? How are the laws of logic self-evident? And how would, for example, a related concept, the uniformity of nature,
Actually,
be
it's my turn to
self-evident,
speak.
David?
Well,
It's my
It's
turn to speak.
self-evident, like 2 plus 2 is 4. They intuit it to be true, and they don't need a further.
No, that would just be defining.
Ask,
Darwin,
ask and
please
answer.
let
It's my
David
turn to speak.
finish the sentence.
Yeah. So let the record show that I'm a Christian, and I want to start with God, and then therefore you have certainty, and it all makes sense, blah blah blah. But I don't think that you can say that the atheist cannot have knowledge and not have a starting point in terms of epistemology. That's my whole point.
Thank you.
David, the
Can I
question
now
that was
speak?
asked was
Isn't it my turn? Isn't it
Okay,
my turn to speak?
Darwin, I'm sorry,
laws of logic
it's
universal.
Art's turn.
Yeah, I've been waiting for a lot, and Darwin's been speaking and having back and forth with somebody. So yeah, wow. So many things here. So finally, Dawkins sort of step up, right? He attempted to answer the challenge as to why it is a problem for somebody to hold to properly basic beliefs without trying to justify them. His answer was, well, I don't have to accept your properly basic beliefs just because you believe them, right? Um, that's his charge, right? And my answer is, and I'm pretty sure every other atheist here is, yeah, we are not saying that you should accept our properly basic beliefs merely because we accept them, right? Or because we assert them or we assume them, right? You don't. You don't need to presuppose that laws of logic are valid. Go ahead. Do not presuppose that laws of logic are valid, please. Right? So if that's the only objection, that's the only problem Dawkins is saying we suffer, right? Well, then doesn't seem to be a problem at all because it doesn't apply to us, right? Because as I explained, we do not argue that he or anybody else should hold to these properly basic beliefs, right? On the grounds of argumentation from us because we don't offer any argumentations. Also, JL has some good questions. Yeah, I will just give my time to JL here.
Okay, JL, your
Okay.
turn.
Oh wow. Okay. Well. Right. So, I mean, have you? I'm not. I'm sure I'm the only one who hasn't. I'm sure I'm not the only one who's noticed. I don't know what I'm saying. But I'm sure other people have noticed, right, that the questions seem to get dodged, right? In fact, when David asked Dawkins a question, right, he didn't actually answer the question. He just started asking David a bunch of questions, right? But one thing is that I'm not quite understanding, right? Like, at the end of that, you heard Dawkins say, oh, well, he's just defining it that way, right? But, well, I mean, for one, right, if you don't accept the definition, right, I don't know what to say to you, right? If my conception of, like, what it means for A to equal A or 2 plus 2 to equal 4 is different than yours, right? Well, I mean, what's there to say, right? It's just like you're saying that you're accepting that A doesn't equal A, right? There's nothing else to say at that point. And it's funny because in order to make sense of the notion of God, creating the laws of logic, whatever that's supposed to mean, and making the world in such a way as it comports with his nature and the way he thinks, right? It has to be true that that's the case and not true and false at the same time, right? So in order to make sense of that statement, Dawkins has to assume the laws of logic, right? So it's not exactly clear why he's criticizing the atheists for assuming the laws of logic, right, when he's doing the exact same thing, right? Another peculiar thing that's sort of related is that you heard him say that he creates the world in accord with his mind and nature, right? But, I mean, this is sort of a different theological issue, right? But if that's the case, right, then why is there evil in the world, right? Presumably God isn't evil, right? In fact, he's essentially good, right? He's good in every world in which he exists, and Dawkins thinks that God is a necessary being, right? And in fact, a logically necessary being, right? So there's not actually a logically possible world in which God exists and isn't perfectly good, right? So I'm not exactly understanding if God makes the world in accord with his mind and nature, right, why the world is evil at all, right? And in fact, he can't appeal to the free will defense, right, because that means that the world is potentially evil, right? But God isn't potentially evil, right? He's perfectly good. There's no possible world in which God does evil, right? So I don't really understand. I mean, that seems like a problem. But just to go back to the issue about the laws of logic, right? I mean, how exactly does Dawkins make sense of the idea that God creates the world in accordance with his nature, right? Without presupposing the laws of logic, right? I just don't really understand that, and I didn't really hear an answer to any of the other questions, right? Like, what would it mean to demonstrate that the laws of logic are true? Why an atheist can't say they're self-evident? I mean, I'm not the only one noticing that the questions are getting dodged, right? I just really don't understand this. Who's ever next? Go ahead. Well, I don't know who's next, but I don't sure.
Okay, Spoken, did you want to go next?
Yeah, I'd like to go after Spoken.
Yeah, I would like to go next. So I asked him a question earlier, like
Me? Or
his don't
me?
man.
Okay.
I asked you, like, when you gave your explanation for why there's a uniformity of nature. Actually, can I ask you a quick question? Do you believe that the laws of logic and everything, like the uniformity of nature, do you believe it holds in all time and all space?
Wait, so you're asking if I think
Like, if the laws of logic will hold, like, let's say, in the past, in the ancient past, and in the really far future? You think they're gonna still? You think they still, like, uphold and they're, like, the same, like, they don't change?
Well, I'm not really. I mean, I'm not really understand. Like, are you asking? Do I think? Because when you say don't they change?
Like, when we say P equals P, all right? Like, that, let's just say, like, this universe is, like, this is just a pure hypothetical, right? This universe is, like, what, roughly 14 billion years old or something like that. Let's say we could go, when the time that we perceive 15 billion years before this universe was even, like, the way it is now, and what if we were able to observe a different universe where the laws of logic and everything were completely different than what they are now, in a way that we can't even comprehend. They're just completely different, and like, it's through some quantum fluctuation that happens throughout all of reality. It changed to what it is, what we have now, roughly 14 billion years ago. And then let's just say in the future, in, like, let's say maybe the next 200 years, there's going to be another one of these universal reality quantum fluctuations that will completely change the laws of logic again to something that we can't even comprehend or conceive of. You know what I mean? Like, if this was actually the case, I mean, would we have any way of saying that that's not the case and that that's not happening?
Well, the problem is that what you're suggesting seems like a counter possible, right? It's not really clear what it would mean, right? When you say that there's, like, a quantum fluctuation and then P doesn't equal P or something, right? So what I'm saying is that it's not really a question that can be made sense of because it's a counter possible, right? It's like if I said if a chair was a horse, it would have 4 legs, right? I mean, does that really mean anything? I mean, it would be vacuously true, right? Because from, like, you know, a contradiction, anything's going to follow.
Okay, so are you done, Spoken?
Yeah, I want to form.
Okay, good. David, you need to go back and we need to have a little conversation here. It is not self-evident, apart from a revelation from God, that the laws of logic are universal.
A self-evident truth, that's the kind of truth like 2 + 1 = 3.
You are a fucking troll.
Or if all men are mortal and Socrates is a man, then Socrates is mortal. That is truth that you can just see to be necessary, like it couldn't possibly be false under any conditions.
You are wrong! You are wrong!
I don't think belief in God is like that. I don't think it's self-evident in that sort of way.
Shut the fuck up!
The way in which simple mathematical and logical truths are self-evident.
You are now forever on my troll list.
I would prefer to say that it's more like it's a basic belief, that is one that doesn't, or a properly basic belief.
I'm done with this cacophony.
He just made a statement. So,
Victory!
Well, there we go. We don't have to worry about it.